Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about the films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, 1986's Lover's Lane. Here's the poster for Lover's Lane. This is an X-rated film directed by Duck Dumont, and this is part of the Vinegar Syndrome Peakorama Big 2-unit show that has two of Duck Dumont's films from 1986 with Pleasure Maze, which I'll be looking at in the future. And what we're looking at tonight is 1986's Lover's Lane. This is a 73-minute film, and from 86, here's some screenshots from it right here. There's some screenshots right there. And let's look at this film, Lover's Lane, starring Tracy Adams, and I believe Tracy Adams is on the front of both of these posters, but this is the one that we're looking at tonight. So let's look at this film here. You know, Vinegar Syndrome has a way of kind of featuring a director, especially on these Peakorama Big 2-unit shows where they'll feature one director, both films, but they really like to focus on directors in general. I picked this up for about 16 bucks, something like that. And Lover's Lane is a film that deals with a group of girlfriends who are now older, who are reminiscing about their younger days, now that they're married and they're older and they have homes and they live in different places now, separated. They're reminiscing about the memories, the sexual memories that they had at a place called Lover's Lane. Now, Duck Dumont, the director, is from San Francisco, so I believe this film was filmed in San Francisco, and I think it might even be mentioned in the film, possibly. I can't remember, but there are some interesting locations in the film that might actually be some kind of like some cityscapes of San Francisco, and I believe it was mentioned in there possibly. There's this very interesting kind of cul-de-sac, U-shaped road that overlooks this amazing nightscape. I mean, if you've seen lovers' lanes in films before, in sex comedies and in romantic comedies, even in horror films like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, I would say this was like the most majestic of the views, or majestic and weird and interesting and a truly nightscape. Now, all that said, we also have a film that's filled with sets. You can kind of sense that you're in a set design, and that is very cool in and of itself as well. There's kind of this empty feel, almost like you're on a stage, like like it just was set up. It was just designed. In one scene inside of a home that might actually be a real home, if you look out the window, you see the first sex scene of the film, you see some trees kind of moving in the window, and so you're kind of wondering, is that a set or is that a real house? So we have some sets, we have some great night shots. We're inside of a car, we're inside of a living room on a couch, we're inside of a bedroom, we're kind of in the hallway in front of the bedroom. It looks like a pretty cool house if that's actually the house. We're in the back of a truck. We're really taking the sexual adventures to another level at Lover's Lane, in public here, on top of the seats, on top of the cars. They're not hiding in these cars like at a drive-in or something. I mean, they are really out there. Now, the film acts in a way like an anthology film that has a kind of a wraparound story. The wraparound story would be the modern day, and the lead girl, I believe Tracy Adams, who is kind of reminiscing and talking to her girlfriends on the phone, and also they came over and they're reminiscing and they're telling of their sexual adventures at Lover's Lane, and in particular this one girl that they cannot wait to come over. They haven't seen her in a long time, and she was a pretty wild girl at the time. And so each time they reminisce about a sexual adventure, we enter into that wonderfully long sexual adventure. And so it acts like an anthology film in that regard. Now, we also have slow motion sequences and voiceover narration. We also have some very interesting fades that happen predominantly in the first sex scene of the film. He also has some very fascinating things going on in terms of the opening title, the opening credit sequence of the film, using sound and the way he uses credits. And it almost feels as if you're not embarking on an X-rated film, even though the film starts off with a sex scene. It doesn't necessarily feel like you're watching an X-rated film. Also, in the closing credit sequence, utilizing sound in a way of showing or of hearing what is happening next as the closing credits dramatically enter onto the screen with that soundscape tying into the end of the storyline. Really using some very interesting, there's so much style to this film, even in the focus of a clock on the wall and time moving, the movement of time and how time can move, especially when you're looking forward to something maybe at the end of the day, and how the time, it just kind of, all that exists is the end of the day. Sometimes you hear bands say that when they're on tour, all that exists is a show that night. And so there's this focus on the clock on the wall that I kind of interpreted in that way, and the style that he uses for that. We also have a lot of different shots, moving in the sex scenes in different angles, some close shots, and then also just a lot of different angles. And what he would do is, it seems like he would kind of cut in this one scene. There are two sex scenes happening at Lover's Lane in two separate vehicles, and it's kind of like one sexual position, then you go to the other couple, another sexual position, then you go back to the other couple and it's another sexual position. It wasn't like they were necessarily changing sexual positions on camera in a way. It was almost like cutting, and he would do that with the fades in the first sex scene. There's some very amazing acting in this film. I was really obsessed with the way that Tracy Adams in particular was on the telephone. A lot of times you'll see people acting like they're talking to somebody on the telephone, and it never really seems legit. They never get the timing or the spacing down to allow the other person on the other end to actually communicate or answer a question or ask them a question. And just some really awesome telephone acting in here, and also some very interesting dialogue during the sex scenes and around the sex scenes. And there's this element in this film, as I said before, there's just a very unique style to this film. Definitely 1986, definitely feels 80s, but in a almost as if you're watching a very artistic mid-80s film clashing with almost like a John Hughes film, in a way, that vibe. And that is predominantly in the music world of the film. The music sometimes is there and then sometimes cuts out for a while and you're just hearing the sounds of sex, and then it comes back in again. The music is 80s synth, and it almost, all the pieces of music in this film, whether they be groovy and danceable, or whether they be kind of slow and and drawing you in and kind of seductive in a way, or atmospheric. All the pieces sound like instrumental versions that could easily have vocals over, that they could have been songs on the radio in the 80s. I'm not saying they sound like other songs. All I'm saying is these pieces of music sound like they could be sung over at the same time. The pieces of music are very, very, very cool, and they sound like stuff that could be in a John Hughes film if there were lyrics on top of them. So that was very interesting as well. And the pieces of music are throughout the film, and real 80s synth type stuff. And in the opening credit sequence, the band or the person that makes the music is titled there, and it's a very unique name. Sometimes you see these unique names for who made the music. And this is a film, it's only, as I stated, it's only 73 minutes long, and it's made up of sex scenes, and long sex scenes, and the sex scenes are the film, they are the style, they are the substance, and we have a bit of, I would say, that wild, almost modern sexual energy that you would see maybe in a modern X-rated film. And, you have a little bit of deep throating, you have a lot of kind of messy blowjobs at certain times in the film, really aggressive sex at certain times in the film. Um, and just really a focus on really wild, messy blowjobs in the film too, and two really awesome lesbian sequences in the film, and great guy-girl sequences. Two girls, one guy sequence, which is the last sequence of the film, is excellent, really, really awesome. And then there's two guys, one girl. And really, you have this core group of female characters that are recounting their sexual memories at Lover's Lane now that they're older. So there's a bit of nostalgia going on in the film as well. And the girls, aren't playing like 18-year-olds. I mean, when they flash back, I guess in a way they are. Um, uh, but they have kind of a blonde energy to them, and also a brunette energy that is steeped in 1986, if you catch my drift, or something about them. And kind of a unique vibe in that the girls also, they're not probably, 18. I mean, actually, at the end credits of the film, it says that all actors were over the age of 21, no matter what role they played. I've never seen that before in an X-rated film. That thing at the end of the movie, that the words on the screen, and so you really have some interesting variety with the girls, but also the sex scenes are extremely moaning loud, and so the music will be in the background. Unlike Carlos Tobalina films, which will sometimes reverse that order and have the music in the foreground. But some of the loudest, wildest female moaning I've heard, hands down, in a film, and almost in a way, the moaning seemed like some moaning that you would hear in a modern X-rated film as well, with the aggression in some of the sex scenes. Um, and the girls are moaning like crazy and gyrating like crazy, and really there's like a ton of aggressive sexual energy going on in this film, and it's messy and wild. This is Lover's Lane from 1986. It's the first time I've ever seen a film by this director, Duc Dumont. So this is I'll be looking at Pleasure Maze in the future on this page, and here it is, folks. Lover's Lane from 1986. Let's take a trip back to the sexual memories of our youth at the old Lover's Lane. Thank you so much for watching a 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like Lover's Lane from 1986. Please feel free to check out all my other reviews in this YouTube page: exploitation, sexploitation, adult, horror, weird, underground, surreal, sex comedies, Jess Franco, Valerian Borocek, Joe Sarno, Carlos Tobalina, tons of X-rated stuff right now. It's all here. And please feel free to check out my own personal films by Googling Apartment 1014 Films. Thank you so much, and have a great night.